Our next tutorial is tutorial 24 with our enemy Goomba path nodes. And we want to take a moment to look at the path nodes we created, make sure that we have a prefab set up for them, and just try them out a little bit more with a few more complex setups. So to get started, let's work at adjusting our environment just a little bit, just to complicate it up just a little. We'll add some additional nodes on the side, as well as just adjusting what we do have. What we want to do is create an environment that has a little bit more complex setup so we can figure out how could we get our Goomba in and around if we wanted to. Okay, so the basic setup like this, we'll go ahead and go back into our prefabs, and inside of our prefabs we're going to find that we have our path node prefab, and in this prefab we'll go ahead and just drag and drop it into our hierarchy, and we'll reset the position. So on this prefab, it's pretty straightforward. We'll look back at it. We've got a path instruction. What is it telling the Goomba to do? Move left, right, stop, or jump. We have a jump over right, so we can actually make it jump a little higher if we need to get him up from, for instance, one platform to the next. We have a change path instruction, which simply says if a trigger counts down to a certain point after the Goomba going through it, then let's change the direction that it was. So if it was moving left, then we could change it to moving right. And we also have a remove on trigger, so once the Goomba passes through it, it actually will remove it on that trigger, and a trigger countdown timer just in case the effect isn't actually applied to the object in time. Then we can delay the delete of our trigger to give it a little more time. The other parts of this, we've just got our box collider set as our trigger, and then we've got our gizmo script so that we can see where our triggers are, where our path node is inside of the scene. Okay, so we've got our basic path node. Let's make a copy of this one, and we'll just drag this one to the side. By default, we've got it set to left, so the left's going to work. If we go over here, well, let's go ahead and set this one to, maybe it's going to go to the right. That way we could keep our Goomba back and forth in between here. Now what is going to happen is we're going to have a lot of little path nodes, so we do want to create a center point for those. So let's go ahead and create a new game object. Let's just reset our position, and let's call this game object our path nodes little folder, and we're simply going to drag these up, parent them to path nodes. This way we have a nice way of organizing the files, and we don't get too cluttered with a lot of little path nodes. We can just wind them all up in there. Okay, that gets us the path nodes. Next thing we'll do is just test this out with our Goomba. So we're going to go back into our prefab, and we'll do our prefab player Goomba, drag and drop him into the scene, and it looks like he's set up in a good way. So let's add in a couple of things we need, which is our chase target. So we'll grab our player that we need to add to the Goomba for the transform, and a home position node, so we'll go ahead and create that one. And the home position we'll drag and drop into our home position there. That gets us set up on this part. We can go ahead and turn the toggle on for this so we get an idea of how much it's going to see. And we're not really caring too much about him chasing the target. We simply want him just going back and forth inside of the environment. As far as the home goes, we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit larger. We could actually do an option for not using the home range if we wanted to, just to make sure that he can see everything. But what we can also do is just increase the size of it. So the search range, we'll bump this down to something nice and small, so he's not looking for Mario per se. And with that, he's going to start off moving to the right. We'll start him moving off to the left. Let's hit play. We'll move Mario out of the way. And our Goomba is using our path nodes and going back and forth. Now, what we want to do is set up something a little more complex. So, let's say we want it to look like our Goomba is actually thinking about what he's doing. So maybe we're going to have him path back and forth between these points, erase this one, make it out this way, maybe come to this one where we actually let him pass through, and then make his way down, make his way back up. It's all about just how we set these up to make that action happen. So we'll start off with this one at the top. We'll set this path node to move left, but we're also going to do a path change instruction so that it's actually going to change over. What are we going to change to? We're actually just going to remove the trigger out of the scene. How many times do we want to do it? We'll do it 2 times. So he'll go back and forth, back and forth. We'll remove it out of the scene. He'll go back to this one. And then the next one we could do is with this one. So we could say, well, let's have him go back and forth, and when he gets to here, he'll come back through. So changing that path instruction. And this time we want a little bit more, because if we start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we got at least 3 times. We'll see how that works. And what are we going to change to? We could remove on trigger. There we go. Or we could even jump. How's that? Let's do a jump. A jump in air. And we'll do a jump override. And we could set that one to, let's say, about 6. Alright. So with that basic setup, we'll let our little Goomba run and see what he does. So he's going back and forth. And we're going to be getting down to our 0 point for the trigger count. He goes back over that way. So if we wanted him to go all the way over, we need 1 extra little trigger count. Or remove 1 from here. But you can see how you can start creating this sense of logic to the character by just staging these path nodes in different areas. There we go. And with that, we're going to call it a good exploration of our path nodes.